Welcome everyone to the Dreambuildrs podcast. I am super excited for the upcoming interview because this is an interview I've been looking forward to for a while, because what we're about to discuss is something that's really resonating with me as a person, but also resonates very well with what Dreambuildrs is all about. So definitely something you want to know more about if you want to live an enriching and a purposeful life with meaningful contributions to the world. So therefore, I am very excited to introduce to you Lena Papadopoulos. Lena is a life, purpose, and transformation coach, and she's an award-winning intercultural educator. She helps impact-driven dreamers, idealists, and visionaries gain clarity, courage, and confidence so that they can uncover and step into their purpose, feel free and fulfilled, and make a positive impact in the world. Lena, thank you so much for coming on the Dreambuildrs podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure.
Now, I can tell you that it's exciting. It's cute. I'm glad you're excited.
Yeah. Now, let's just dive straight in because you are all about purpose. So I want to talk about purpose. And first of all, tell us a little bit about your backstory and ultimately how you got to find your own purpose. I think that will be a great question to start with.
Well, I kind of always had this, like from growing up as a kid, this fascination with trying to understand, like, why are we here and what is the purpose and what is like the greater, bigger meaning. And I was always really interested in spirituality and religion and how those things talked about, our reason for being. And so I always had this kind of this sense or knowing that we're here for a reason. It's just kind of like how I always felt. But as I grew up, I just faced a lot of different challenges with one, like being Greek American and navigating what it was like to exist between two very different cultures and to kind of be an outsider everywhere I went, like didn't really quite belong anywhere. And then I had issues with, like my family life and my parents and being in a really toxic environment and with a lot of different forms of abuse. And I got to this point as a teenager, 13, 14 years old, where I really hated my life and I was really depressed and not in a good place at all. And in that time, I met somebody named Ned, who became a friend of mine, and we spent a lot of time together. We were in art school together, and I just felt like for the first time in my life that somebody really saw me and understood me and accepted me as I was and was just really present and supportive and encouraging, like through my depression and helping me kind of see a different perspective. And then not long after that, he decided to take his own life, and I found out that he had been depressed and suicidal for years, and I didn't know that. And I think I was just really struck by, well, kind of like how self-absorbed I had been, that I didn't realize this person sees me and understands me because they know how I feel, and they are in the same position. And I didn't realize that. And he was just so important in my life for so many reasons. And I really realized through that experience, like through losing him, that what I wanted and what I felt my purpose was to create a space for people to feel safe, accepted, seen, understood for who they really are, like without the masks, without performing, without pretending. How can you, like just to hold space for people to be the truth of who they are. And ultimately, I think that's everybody's purpose, is to embody the truth of who they are, not who they've been taught to be, not who we're supposed to be, who we should be, but who we really are. And that's like our ultimate greatest purpose. And then through that, in embodying the truth of who we are, we use like our gifts and our skills and the things that make us unique and magical, like we use those things to serve other people in some way. And somehow it might look different, but at the core, I think even that is still about creating space for people to be their full selves. And so, yeah, I mean, there's like so much to say and I could talk forever, but that's kind of the core of it, I guess. Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's an amazing story, and it's really heartfelt. Now, before I ask you, okay, so how did you then really find your purpose? What is your purpose actually right now?
It's still, I think, like to create that space for people to feel or to be completely themselves. And how I'm doing that right now, I guess, is that a really important part of my work for me is making the unconscious conscious and bringing to light the things that either we don't want to look at or that are so deeply buried within us that we can't see. Like there's so many layers there. And so what I really want to help people do is kind of like excavate and uncover that stuff and bring it to the surface and work with it, because like our operations in the world are like 5% conscious. 95% of it is unconscious. It's just a program we're running on autopilot. And so much of what we do is like totally beyond our conscious awareness. And so helping people see like, how are all these unconscious patterns that I'm taking part in, like how are they disconnecting me from my truth, and how are they keeping me from showing up as who I really am? And therefore, because when we compress and depress the truth of who we are, I mean, that's what I think leads to depression. It's that the depressing of who we are, right? And that leads to depression, anxiety, unfulfillment, unhappiness. And so how do we reconnect with that truth? And that's, I think, one of like the main things that I do with my work with people now. So, yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. So really living on your own terms. And you already touched upon something that I would love to talk about. You were talking about all these masks and layers that we have built up around us, like perhaps you can call it like social conditioning or cultural conditioning or conditioning from your family. Like, how can we as people let go of that and really start living out what truly matters to us?
Right. Yeah, I think that's the hardest part, because I say with my clients that my role is to facilitate awareness, but their role is to apply the integration, like to practice the application of the awareness. And that's the difficult part, I think, because it does require us to change how we've been operating and to do things differently. And things that feel scary to us, even if they are liberating, it's still like an unknown, right? We're more comfortable with the shit that we're used to than the stuff that we're just like not sure how it's going to be.
Yeah.
And so it's a process and it takes practice. That's something I always say, like you have to practice being a new way, like behaving a new way, thinking a new way. So it's not enough just to become aware. It has to become something that we do. And I was thinking about this analogy the other day of like an athlete and a team, and how athletes, like we, as an athlete, you practice your sport in order to get better, right? To improve yourself, to get better at whatever it is you're doing. but also because that allows for the betterment of others, right? For the way that you interact with others, engage with others, like how the team works together. So it's just like, it's a process of unlearning and relearning and unbecoming and rebecoming. I know that's like super intangible and abstract. But, you know, I think it depends on everybody's particular like context and circumstance and situation of like, what are the things they need to practice. But that's the key, I think, is really being intentional about making change, because that is a really scary thing for people to do. It's so much easier to hold on to the familiar, even if it sucks, you know?
I know. Yeah, you know, I've been there as well. You know, I've also been at crossroads in my life where I felt stuck in my job, and then it's always that step to then follow your purpose is even harder than staying in your job
Yeah.
sometimes, right? So I know exactly what
Yeah.
you're talking about. Um, and I would love to
And
know
they,
from you, because you also said like it's so intangible to let go of these, you know, of this cultural conditioning and so on. Like, what is something that really helped you on your path to let's say live your purpose and to really follow that feeling of your true self?
mm-hmm. um, I think it has a lot to, I mean, one of the biggest things I think we have to learn how to do is to let go of our need for like approval or caring how other people see us or perceive us, because so much of what holds us back is the fear of what other people will think or how they will react. And a lot of people are afraid to be their true selves because they've had experiences early on in which somehow, in some way, their truth, they were punished for it, or abandoned for it, or rejected, or whatever, right? And so we carry this like subconscious fear of like, if I show who I really am, people won't want me anymore. And that's scarier than like, well, they rejected my mask, right? It's scarier and more hurtful to be rejected for the truth of who you are than for who you're pretending to be. And so I think like a big part of it is learning to let go of that and realize like the people who can't see and accept you for who you are, like maybe they're just, there comes a point where you kind of evolve beyond your connection with some people, and even in that, like we have to change and we have to let go and say, okay, like I can still love you, but we're just like, we don't we don't get each other anymore, like I've evolved beyond this. And so yeah, I think it has to also, it's about like being okay with letting things go. And that's a thing, like letting things go, because here's another thing, like psychologically, right? I don't know if you've ever heard of the sunk cost fallacy,
No.
but it's like this idea that once we've invested time, energy, money, whatever into something, that we need to see it through, that we've like lost out or we wasted that time, energy, money if we don't commit to that thing we
Yeah, yeah.
invested in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I got this degree and I started working in this job and I spent all this money for this education, blah, blah, blah. And I hate it and my life sucks, but I invested. And so I have to stay committed. And so it's like we choose misery over change, because we like tell ourselves that it was a waste. So I wasted the time and energy and money up to this point, so I may as well just keep wasting it, right? Like it doesn't make sense
Yes.
how strongly we hold on to stuff, you know? Like if you watch a movie that's 2 hours long and 20 minutes in, you're like, I know, I hate this. There are people who will keep watching it because they're like, I have to see how it ended because I started it. And it's like, and now you wasted 2 hours of your life. So like, why? You know?
I totally see what you mean. Yeah. Oh man. All right. So Let's get to something practical, because I
Okay.
also love practical things. So if we talk about finding your purpose, what are some tools perhaps that you have used or that you recommend others to use to really get clear on your purpose and what you're meant to do in this world?
Mm-hmm. Well, I like to, well, I have this kind of like blueprint map thing that I use. But I really like to look at people's most kind of profound and significant life experiences and the challenges they went through, the things they overcame, the lessons they learned, because I think there's a lot in that about like how do you impart your wisdom to other people. And so how does that kind of interconnect with your skills, the things that you're really good at doing, with the things that you deeply care about? And I don't necessarily like to talk about passions per se, but I like to talk about something that in Greek we call meraki, which is just like to put your heart and soul into something. So to do it like from the truth of who you are, kind of, even if it's like cooking a meal or making a cup of coffee. So what is it that like really makes you feel like I'm pouring the true, like who I am into this thing that I'm doing? So like looking at that stuff and considering how I think also pain, especially. So like, what are my pain points? What are the things that hurt me or anger me or make me feel like I have to create some kind of change in this? So it could be pain that we've experienced or that we've witnessed. But I think our pain points are really key to understanding our purpose, because so much of the time it's the hard stuff we go through that equips us to support other people through similar experiences, right? And yeah, so and there's some other things too, but I like to look at how all these things combine and interconnect, and what are the themes and patterns that we can see, because you always see themes and patterns when you look at this stuff. And so that's, I think, where the key is within the subjects that come up again and again as we explore these aspects of who you are. Mm-hmm.
Amazing, very valuable stuff. Now, you were talking about a blueprint in the beginning
Yeah.
of the question. I would love to know what the blueprint is about, because that sounded very interesting. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So it's just like a PDF I created where it has like a space for all these different components that I'm talking about. And as I go through like a purpose clarity session with somebody, as they're talking to me, like I'm asking them questions based on the blueprint, and as they talk, I just kind of take little notes. And then at the end, I say, here it is. And it's kind of like a map of how all the different pieces connect. And then, yeah, it's like a big, light bulb moment for people, like, oh, I didn't even know all those pieces were related in that way. So yeah, it's just a PDF.
But it's a very beautiful PDF, right? So it's not just a PDF. Now, Lena, so then
Yeah.
people have found their purpose, so they have a lot of clarity on what they potentially can do in this world, what they're all about, and how they can build a positive impact in the world, and eventually how they can find more fulfillment. What will be one tip for you to really start living out your purpose? Because finding is one thing, but living it out is another thing, right? We all know that.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like all about taking action, like what some of the big gurus are saying, or is it just like the opposite, actually? What's your experience with that?
Oh, that's a good question, because I think I think our need to like do is so rooted in capitalism. And personally, it's like doesn't speak to me or to my values or my worldview. And I think there is a lot of power in being. And if we're talking about your purpose as embodying the truth of who you are, then it is literally about being yourself. And the doing, whatever that looks like, is just a natural extension of you being yourself, right? So if I, if I want to hold space for people to feel safe, like, well, what is the like do that I have to do for that? Like, what am I supposed to be chasing, or what's the goal I'm running after? Like, no, it's about being present when I'm in a space with a person, and it's just about actually being myself as I be in that space with them, right? So I think it's something that if you are really reconnecting with who you are and allowing yourself to accept who you are, then it's just a natural unfolding. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, sure. Let's go ahead, because I know you quit your job a couple of years ago. It was in 2017, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you started building your own business. And I think that for anyone who is listening right now and is thinking about a similar step, like, what were some of the successful elements in that journey of you to make that leap confidently? Because by making that leap, people have a lot of doubts, fears, anything. There's a lot that comes with it, making a decision like that. So what were
Yeah.
some of the successful elements to make that leap confidently?
Well, the truth is that for me to do something like that, to make a big change, a big leap, like, for me, that's not uncomfortable. It's not scary. It's not whatever. So this is something I actually have kind of a hard time giving advice about, because I don't necessarily like know how it feels. But on the other side of it, as I tried to really build everything and create it, I think that's where all the fear and the doubt came in, because it forced me to face the fact that I was disconnected from myself and I was denying parts of myself, because as I took this step to create something that was really my own, then I started having to ask myself, well, like, what do I actually want this to look like? And it's been this process really since then, the last 3 years, of reconnecting with myself and seeing all the different things in my past that have like created fears in me around certain things or self-doubts. And so it's been a lot of kind of like having to face the things that took me away from my truth. And like, I have a background in intercultural education, and so when I first left my job and started my business, that was my focus, like, to continue that intercultural education. But as I went on, I was like, that's not really what I want to do. And I'm even still now, I think it's becoming super clear recently, especially with these eclipses, but it's time to break up with that identity. Like, I have to let it go. And that's been the hardest thing for me, because it was such a huge part of my life for 15 years. So it's like, I can still take the lessons that I learned without being an intercultural educator. Like, I don't have to cling to that. So for me, the leap was easy. But I think it's just kind of like asking yourself, do I want to stay? Do I want to stay in the shit that I'm in, or do I want to take a chance? And it's possible that I could land in some more shit, but it's also possible that that it could be amazing and fulfilling and be everything I ever hoped it would be. And at least there's an option, there's a possibility of something different. Whereas if I just stay where I am, well, I already know what I'm getting. Like, it's more on fulfillment, more on happiness, more of what I don't want. Like I already know that it's a given, right? So there's a big element, right, of trust that's needed, like trust that I have what it takes to support myself, trust that I am resilient, trust that things work out. So much trust is needed, but you know.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being so honest and open about your own journey. I appreciate that. In the beginning of this conversation, you said something very interesting, and I think that resonates very well with what you do as well, and with who you are. And it is like creating spaces for people to truly be themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think this is something that is super important, like anywhere in the world, whether it's in organizations, in businesses, in schools or universities. So from your experience working, in education, and I know you have been working across the world,
Mm-hmm.
like what are some of the aspects to create a safe space for people just to be themselves?
So in my experience, a big part of it, I think, is setting the tone, is kind of modeling what it looks like. So if I'm bringing a group of people together and I want them to be vulnerable about something and I want them to share and be open, then I think I have to set the tone for that and I have to be the example. So I go first and I'm very open and I'm very honest, and it's kind of like I set the bar for, like, because if I say, like, let's get really deep and vulnerable about something and I leave it up to everybody in the room, well, they're just going to keep it pretty surface level because that feels more comfortable and safe. But if I really like create this environment of, like, I'm being super open and super honest and vulnerable with you, I might cry, whatever, then it makes people feel like they let their guard down, right? And they feel more open and like it's more acceptable to show themselves in that way. And I've had lots of people tell me after certain like experiences I facilitated that they tell me I was as open as I was because you were as open as you were. And so that's, I think, a big part. It's about, like, I can't expect people to be vulnerable with me if I'm not being vulnerable with them, right? And then also just in general, creating a space of non-judgment. So just really being present and listening without the need to fix or provide solutions, because I think a lot of times it's like what we feel we have to do when somebody's sharing something with us. It's like, well, how do I make it better? And so often that's not even what people want, right? They just want to be heard. Like, somebody just hear me speak my truth and don't tell me what to do with it. Like, just listen. And so I think that's a big part too, is not, because so much of the time too, when we're giving advice or trying to fix things, right, it's a projection of our own feelings about what they're talking about, our own experience. So it's not even necessarily relevant to them. And so that's another aspect, but.
Thank you. Now, last time we were talking, you said something interesting, because I asked you the question, like, where do you see yourself in, what was it, like 10 years from now, or what is your future vision? And you said something like, I don't really think about it, because as long as I'm open and free and live my purpose and live with meaning, I'm at the right place. And I want the listeners to get kind of a takeaway to understand how you actually do that, because that's that's easier said than done, right? So how do you, let's say, live your purpose always at the right place at the same time?
Yeah. So it's, I think, very like living a very values-based driven life. So being really clear on what do I value, like what is important to me in life, in the way that I engage with other people, in the way that I show up for myself, like what do I value? And for me, because I think, right, our traditional definitions of success are again very much rooted in capitalism and ownership and having, right, and doing. And for me, it's, well, what do I really value and how do I live out my values? And for me, that is success. So if I value integrity, then I want to be honest in my engagement with people. I want to be, like ethical, like do things in the way that I perceive to be quote unquote right.
Yeah.
And if, right, I can do that in my life on a daily basis, like there's not something I have to work toward or achieve or get to. Or if my value is curiosity, well, I can be curious each and every day, curious about other people, curious about how things work and why they are the way they are. And so, like, if I am living out my values, then I am doing something that's meaningful to me. And for me, that's what success is. It's to live a life of like meaning and purpose. Otherwise, it's kind of like, well, why are we even here? Like, do you really think that you came to this planet like to like work so hard and hate your life and like own a house that will just like be gone when you die? Or I don't know, you know what I mean? It's like we're so focused on things that like they don't actually really matter, but we've been taught that they do, and so we don't necessarily even question it. And so yeah, it's like I don't feel that I need to achieve all these things that society tells me I need to achieve. Like, no, I just want to be a happy person. And like, what does that look like for me? What does it look like for you? And in that way, like, oh.
Yeah, I love it. It's really defining success for yourself and what it means for you, right? Instead of
Yeah.
what the world designed to you, what success really means. So, all right. So we're coming to the end of this conversation, and I would love to know if there is anything else that we haven't discussed that you perhaps would love to share from your heart with the listeners right now.
Gosh, anything else? I don't know. Nothing's coming to me in the moment.
That's okay.
Know.
Then we have discussed everything, right?
Well, no, I don't think so, but but no, I don't have anything in this moment.
No? All right. Then we're going to wrap up. I think that will be the best way. So,
okay.
Lena, thank you so much for this conversation. I really appreciated your time and all your wonderful
Thank you
insights.
for
Before you go, I would love for you to share where the best places are that people can find you and your work if people would love to learn more about you.
Yes, so my website, it's lenapapadopoulos.com, and my Instagram, which is Lena_Papadopoulos. And those are like the two best ways for sure.
All right. So follow Lena on Instagram. Go to her website as well. I will drop her social handles in the comments below in the caption. Once again, Lena, thank you so much for your insights and the wonderful conversation. You are a wonderful person, and I will keep following your work in the future. So I'm really, really grateful for this conversation, and I hope we can meet in person one day. Thank you.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you.